All right. Everybody hear me okay? All right.
Loud and clear, man.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so today I wanted to bring us together because there's been a lot of chatter, DOJ wise. There's a press conference about 45 minutes ago or so at this point, as well as two pieces of news kind of hitting, both one through the MSSP Alert and the other one coming through a friend of mine, Tim Golden, that brought up a bill that is in front of Congress that also was referenced in today's press conference. Kind of get that started off. I don't know if there's anybody joining us, but your comments, we'll go ahead and bring them up here if you're watching live. We didn't have much time to promote this, but just kind of wanted to get the crew together to have a chat about some of these things. So, Dom, if you want to kick us off on kind of what your thoughts when I showed that link to you about those two links, I suppose.
Yeah, I read the MSSP Alert article first, and honestly, my first thought was it's about time. Like, it's very commonplace in this industry to say you do things that you don't do, and I think at a time in history, the impact was not what it is today, right? So,
Yeah,
it's checks are getting cashed is really what's happening, right?
Yeah. They said, listen, the official press release, DOJ outlined 3 types of allegations it may pursue against federal contractors or grant recipients. But they also kind of in that document defined HIPAA. They defined several places where this crosses into their jurisdiction around these lawsuits. And basically they're saying if you're knowingly providing deficient cybersecurity products or services, which, boy, that gets really nuanced. Right? And maybe we'll dig into these each one by one. Number 2 was knowingly misrepresenting their cybersecurity practices or protocols, right? And number 3, knowingly violating obligations to monitor and report cybersecurity incident and breaches. And I think I want to start with number 3 because number 3 says like knowingly violating obligations to monitor. You've got new requirements from different privacy laws in different states, but you also kind of have this bill that's the privacy, kind of disclosure bill that we were just talking about as well, that was referenced today by the DOJ saying, hey, listen, we're trying to come up with a disclosure bill, right, that people must follow. And so now not only that, but you have to have, true story. I got to post that one. But go ahead, Dom. I'm going to post this comment because he's right. Yeah, true story. It kind of is that smoke before the fire, right? Because they are talking about things that cross anything that the public government funds, is what the attempt is. It seems like. Yeah, and it's okay for judging me for not having an ad blocker. I don't have an ad blocker. It's fine. I'm okay. You're right though. But
jeez, man.
But the other thing about it is saying these 3 words knowingly, right? And yeah. I think, Dom, you made a point earlier. I'll let you make it. But, it was very accurate about MSPs and where does this knowingly kind of come into play? A great example was what?
Well, I think it comes into how you're defining what you do, right? I think and I've been guilty of this in the past, right? And I cleaned it up before I sold my shop, but we say, oh, we monitor things or we do things proactively. And if your definition of that is I log into Webbrew once a month and see if there's anything exciting in there, that there's nothing proactive about that, right? That's not, so that's the knowingly for me is right. Like, and that's also where the catch comes in is what was deficient about it, right? Like there's no legal definition of deficient cybersecurity services. But I think that's going to take shape, right? We're going to have case law before you know it. And suddenly we're going to have the standard set by case law of this is what deficient means, guys. Like,
well, it's an accurate statement, right? First, I want to touch on Jessica Bishop. You obviously can't stand up and say malware-free webinar or 100% secure, right? That was the webinar I almost got thrown out of for saying, no, you can't put malware-free in front of my face like this. And there's no guarantee. I got malware on this machine now. But yeah, if you're out there saying we're 100% secure, you're creating the very histrionics that you'll probably hang by in this kind of definition. Right. But in your same point, I was on a panel in Wisconsin about a week ago, I guess, and one of the parties was this young lady who was one of 3 certified cyber prosecutors assistants, essentially. So able to talk about chain of custody, but it talks about that prosecutorial gap right now, right? That they really do have this. We don't have a defined what's deficient. right? What is, the standard? And I think it goes back to kind of what you and I have actually already had some conversations around is, MSPs should be looking for defensibility, right? Tying it to some known good framework, CIS, NIST, name them. There's tons of them out there. And then being able to show iterant and improvement, but most importantly, immutably show that documentation of doing those things. Right.
And on the marketing front, like Cromar, and you can weigh in on this because you've been in marketing, but it's you hear the attorney's ad, the strong arm, but then it says, I'm a non-attorney spokesperson. That happened because some case happened sometime, right? And there was that confusion.
Yeah.
And you have to look at cybersecurity in the same light.
Well, I mean, this reminds me of pre-tech days in my life. Worked in marketing for a beverage company, and the big issue was showcasing natural, organic logos on your food. There really were no rules and regulations around that. And this is the very similar case where, you can say I'm 100% secure, no malware, whatever those phrases are, and it's really just marketing fluff. Who's holding their feet to that fire? Something I've heard many folks say, and maybe one of you too as well, is that, a barber or a hairstylist has to have a cosmetology license to cut my hair and shave my beard. But to be an MSP, Chuck down the street could go do that without any kind of rules and regulations. And so you're in an industry that it's really not, up until now, it really wasn't governed. And now you have you have to be defensible because this stuff really can hurt an MSP. And so, it's that's my mind went right to this natural organic stuff. What can you say? What can you get away with? And just like Dom just said, right? How many times you get a marketing guy like myself in front of a crowd? I am not a lawyer, but this is what this product does or doesn't do. So don't hold my feet to the fire kind of thing.
Well, that goes into that kind of paradoxical challenge we have as security professionals right now, right? You have this marketing-facing world of, I'll be your defender, right? To not name one that I love, right? And we've got you. Don't worry. This is solved, covered, no problem. Go to a battle zone with a soldier who says, I got you, and have no weapon run behind him. I promise you, it doesn't feel as calm as we feel it today when they say they got me. And I think that's the challenge is we have to understand that there's risk. These things are meant to reduce. We're here to help protect. We're here to help take care of those things, but we can't solve it all. But one of the other things that goes into this, and I got another guest jumping in, but one of the other things that goes into this, and it's perfect timing because Tim is the one that brought this to my attention, but is that we have this bill right now in Congress, and I think my screen's probably a little fuzzy to see in this way, but it's essentially put forth saying, hey, we're going to define a managed service provider, right? The bill is entitled the Cyber Incident Reporting Act of 2021. And what it does come down to is actually defining what's reportable, who's an entity, who should report. And since Tim brought this to my attention first, I'm going to go ahead and see if we can bring Tim up. So, Tim, if you want to bring your camera on, I'm going to bring you on.
Oh, do I really have to? I'm standing outside.
Oh, well, you don't have to. We can just listen to your beautiful voice.
Try.
It's all right.
Radio show now. It's all good.
It's a radio show. Yeah,
first time caller, long time listener, Tim. Hit us, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey,
there he is.
First time caller, long time listener. I don't know how well this is working outside, but we'll see how well it works. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm Tim Gold.
How's it going?
Compliance guys. Good. Matt,
yeah, so you kicked me this morning and, said, hey, listen, Matt, this is a bill that it looks like it was October 6th or so when it was brought up, but the snippet you pulled out of it was what was so good. It really just basically said, listen, if you touch technology, if you deploy security tools, if you do anything, you're now a managed service provider. Am I paraphrasing that correctly, Tim? I'm trying to find out.
Yeah, you are. I think there were a couple didn't mention anything about CSP or cloud service providers.
Right.
But I mean, overall, I think you're paraphrasing it quite well. It's interesting how these bills tend to begin to get refined and take shape as they work through the legislative process. But key takeaway here is now we have the federal government's radar, and we're on their mind, and they're starting to define who and what we are as an industry.
And Tim, did you see this reporting bill referenced by the Justice Department today in their kickoff call about the arrests they made. So today, the DOJ had a kickoff call about one arrest and one sanctioning and potential arrest. But they referenced this bill and said, listen, we need it all reported. We need to have a national defined standard of reporting. And so you kind of see this interesting circular piece where not only are they saying we're going to define the entity, we're going to define the action of reporting, and we're going to say if you knowingly don't report, you're now subject to us coming after you from a civil penalty perspective. Like, I just wanted to make sure that this really lands with the MSPs to see the writing on the wall, that this really, really, really is all the pieces necessary for the action to start being taken for people that are out there falsifying. And I think it's going to take the whistleblower program, if you saw that component of it, right, Dom, that you can actually make money by reporting others.
Right.
Imagine taking over a client and then seeing that person re-reported. The former MSP said they were doing this. We noticed this. We documented this. We documented the lack of all of this. Here's your data. Let's go make some capitalization and hurt our competitor at the same time.
It's Crime Stoppers, right? Chrome is Crime Stoppers. It's literally like, imagine if murder went unreported. Like, that's it's not unlike what we're talking about right now. And I think we're at a point where cybercrime has a massive impact in the real world. And I think a lot of people don't really see or understand that, but that is the case. Like, cybercrime hits human life more often now. And that's part of why we're starting to see the step in.
Let's face it, in one fall swoop, an MSP could literally take out hundreds of companies by having a password 123, right?
Yep. Yeah, and they realize that. In fact, I heard this through the grapevine on, the arrest of this North Texas thing. I mean, that came through potentially MSP activity of correlation through the FBI saying, hey, these 9 companies all got hit within 12 seconds of each other in the same ransomware incident. Maybe that company was a managed provider. I mean, so they actually worked into it through the casework, right? They actually worked into it by these things being seconds apart and going, how did this threat actor do this in so many different places when this wasn't a disclosed thing?
Wait a minute. Guys, we're going to be rich. We're going to start the first 48 Cybercrime Edition. We're going to document how this happens. Because it's fascinating, because law enforcement is finally developing, and not even just at the FBI level, but even at, more sophisticated state and local levels, we're finally developing this capability to do cyber investigation, right? And that hasn't existed at anywhere but the FBI, and obviously in partnership with the IC. But like, that's finally starting to exist, where we can take a report of a crime, say ransomware, and we can identify the source, and we can start to piece these things together.
Yep.
Then when the legal system gets involved, there's actual evidence, right? Yeah. And I think the next evolution of this law in particular is, okay, you've reported it, freeze, we're going to investigate it, right? Right. Because we need to understand if there's a criminal aspect of this, and there usually is. So the impact of this is not significant right now, because it is just civil. We're obviously talking about money, which is the hardest place you can hit people. But I think really this evolves, right? This evolves into national standards of how this type of crime is, just like we have a standard for how do you investigate someone who's been shot, right? Well, you do these steps as a detective, and you find these pieces of evidence, and you work with your CSI team, you tie things together. That's going to be the same exact thing.
And you have reported case law that allows you to prosecute that the same for everyone, that allows you to set rules and standards of that. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. This is going to continue to develop into, what we see as the modern kind of framework for cyber. I get excited. Sorry to cut you off, but
it's good.
This kind of is like the Industrial Revolution. I mean, if you think back to those days, I mean, the reason we have building codes come out of that, the reason that we have, laws on exit bars on doors come from burning women to death in a sewing room, right? Like we learn through and legislate through those losses. And I think what's different about this industry is that it's happening and iterating so fast that it's almost even faster than the Industrial Revolution in its iterance and change and lack of ability for us to catch up from a prosecutorial and regulation perspective.
I want to touch on something, Matt. You bring up a really good point. The Industrial Revolution piece is it makes a ton of sense, and it's really applicable here. But everyone understands, hey, you don't want to see people jumping out of a flaming building. Not
Right,
not
right.
everyone understands cybercrime and what's going on with ransomware and what that means.
You mean just from a raw human perspective, watching people falling out of the building? I
Like,
agree.
it's
Yeah.
not hard for the layman to see person jumping out a window equals bad.
Bad.
Like,
Yeah.
it's-
Should have had a fire escape. That would have been very
exactly.
helpful, right?
But
Like,
but oftentimes with the ransomware component and what's going on here, it's like, well, how does this affect me? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And people so oftentimes are
well, there's an
unwilling-
education burden.
Yes.
No, it think.
Well, it comes down to
unwilling,
communication.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Like
Tom.
we have to say XYZ was impacted by ABC. That's where it kind of stops right now. So they paid, a $1.2 million ransom or whatever they did. We don't equate that to, oh, by the way, they lost this much in revenue and it impacted this many jobs. Or in the case of like there was, I think it was last year, maybe it was 19, but a hospital, it's been a while, I don't remember the country, but there was a hospital that got ransomware and started sending patients elsewhere. Somebody died because the hospital couldn't take this patient in an ambulance. You have to bring that to light. You have to say it does have an impact beyond cyberspace. It has an impact on people's livelihoods, on people's reputations, on people's ability to function, or frankly, their life, like depending on the target and the victim, right? Yeah. The extensibility of who's impacted by that can be huge, right? Like they had that whole thing about the NHS in the UK being vulnerable. Man, imagine if the whole health system of an entire country got brought to its knees. Like that is now a terrorist attack, right?
Oh,
like
for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we had what was the attack this weekend that they took down physical infrastructure in Iran? There was an attack, if I recall. But yeah.
Neither confirm nor deny.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I think though, we joke, but even in the earlier days of the Industrial Revolution, when electricity was becoming a thing, right? So we started with steam power, we then went into internal combustion, we then started spinning dynamos, creating electricity. Like it was a bit of a marketing war, but they literally shocked an elephant to try to bring something that wasn't like immediately visible to understand to something that could happen, right? It was the proverbial falling out of the window. They literally electrocuted an elephant to death. It was trying to say, hey, AC power's bad, right? Or DC, I may be wrong on my facts, but the point is it was still trying to cover that miasmic misunderstanding of, but it's just some wire up there. This doesn't do anything to me. Yeah, it's not like falling out of a window. You have to see this. Like, you got to understand this first. And so...
Well, at one point, there was a sign on the power pole, right, that says, hey, don't climb this big metal thing attached to electricity. Because somebody went and climbed it and died, and they were like, oh, crap, now we got to tell people, like, this is bad. And it's the same thing, right? And I have seen, small news skits, and they don't make the front page that they should, and they'll do like a SIM swap example, and they'll they'll bring a hacker on and they'll call SIM swap. Things like that need to be highlighted about how easy it really is. Like I go to any old data scrape and I buy it for pennies on something.onion. I compare that against LinkedIn, and now like 24 people at PAX 8 are getting texts from John Street about, did you get my urgent request? Like it's so easy to pull.
I did
off.
send him those gift cards though. He really needed them urgently, so I scratched them off, got them, right into Concur.
John Street's iTunes is off the charts. He's got
he's making so much money right now buying iTunes cards. Oh man, it is, but that's exactly what happens.
PAX 8 runs on iTunes gift cards, in case you didn't know, folks.
So many PAX 8ers. And it's nothing against them. They haven't seen this, but they're like, man, how did they know I work at PAX 8? And I put out a thing and I was like, look, all they're doing is going to LinkedIn, saying you work at PAX 8. They're taking your email from LinkedIn and matching it to a phone number from another data breach. And then they're uploading that to a Twilio-like service and sitting back and waiting for results. So it's so easy to come to these conclusions about who to attack. And then if I really if I was going to do, say, a spearfish or something more sophisticated, I'm going to spend time on your LinkedIn and I'm going to see what you're interested in, what you post about. Yeah. I'm going to know where you went to college, what city you grew up in. I'm going to be able to discern your mother's maiden name. Like all of this stuff is easy to identify, right? And the public doesn't see that. They see it as, no, that's my top secret, most information. No, man, you put it on Facebook yesterday.
Yeah. You answered that questionnaire about your last time you got arrested, what high school you were in, where your first time you kissed a girl, where'd you meet your wife? Like those are all just grooming questions for those type of attacks. And I think I
have to get on my grandparents all the time about those little apps. It's like, what would you look like if you were blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, that's connecting to your data. And so it's just these little things that we need to educate people on. And then we need to show what is the impact when they action that intelligence, right?
Yeah.
That's what's the missing link from public perception, at least in my opinion, is I have to explain to anyone I talk to that isn't, someone I work with on this stuff, what really this means when they gather information or when they do something. Like, what is the net impact?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's looking at that threat surface area, right? And what can I do with that data? What's the risk? What's the impact? What's my susceptibility? You and I have a class tomorrow on, 2 controls that talk about very much the core of this, right? Human training and immutability, right? So, yeah. Did you want to tackle that then? I want to touch on something Shiva said, though, is that, Shiva says, isn't this all civil vis-a-vis the DOJ in the respect of MSPs and MSSPs? And yeah, he's accurate. Today this is saying, hey, listen, if you collect money from the government, we're going to sue you for penalties and damages if you are misrepresenting your services. I really want to point this out more so in this is the step before the step before the step before the step as we march down this path of kind of having standards around what we do. I've never met an MSP that doesn't go, damn trunk slammers. I've never met somebody that goes, yeah, I'm a trunk slammer. Right. So, but I will say, there's varying degrees of that understanding. And I think that, this is the beginning steps to trying to normalize some of that. What's expected? Like, what do you have to do if you're saying you're doing these things? Right. And so
there's no precedence, right? Like at one point, if you still, the modern equivalent or the old equivalent of a candy bar from the gas station, you got your hand cut off. Right. So there's no precedence for how this works. And now we have like petty theft and felony theft. And so I think it also lays out.
Right. That just sunk in. I'm a little slow,
we have
but yeah.
Data. So we need to have the data, which is where the reporting comes in to understand. Hey, you ransomed for $200. That's like a misdemeanor petty theft kind of charge.
Sure.
Oh, you ransomware for $1 million. That involves jail time. So I think there's not enough criminalistic history to ransomware because all of the busts we see are, Revil and the likes of just huge, massive gains that have taken millions. So it's hard to sort of understand, I guess, in my opinion, if you're legislature, like how do you assign penalties to different levels of cybercrime? I think it's a tough topic that needs exploration.
But I think with that comes because you only hear about, or the news only talks about these multi-million-dollar ransomwares, that's why you have the vast majority of, in my opinion, SMBs saying, this will never happen to me. No one cares about me. This stuff doesn't happen. It only happens to the targets of the world. And that's just not true. And I think stuff like this being brought to light is key to helping kind of spread the word a little bit that this is everybody, right? This is not just the big boys in the corporate world. So yeah, I think it's important to have this. I think someone popped up the hospital, the hospital article that you were mentioning, Dom, where someone had died due to a ransomware. So I think we should touch on that or pop that in here.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that in real quick.
Okay,
I got the content.
Tim,
I'm a little slow
drop
on
that in the back end for us, but
I'm waiting for my ads to go away so that I don't get made fun of.
It's definitely a tough article, guys. So if you're watching, but it's a prime example of the outcome.
Like, you know what? Just send it to Matt because he doesn't have ad blocker. He'll be able to open it.
Yeah, no problem. I got this. Yeah. Thanks, Smarty Pantses. Yeah, this is the one that I was referencing too, right? This is Spring Hill announced that back in 2019, Spring Hill Medical Center, that filed. It's in a lawsuit today that the mother is first reporting, saying, "Listen, the hospital basically didn't tell me their hospital systems were down, and subsequently gave me diminished care." So this is one attribution through a lawsuit that's. I act like I'm sharing my screen. Golly. Okay, fair. Touche. Yeah, so baby died because of a ransomware attack on a hospital, lawsuit says. And so the essential premise is that this mother is saying, hey, listen, the hospital didn't give me the understanding that they were operating in reduced capacitance. As a result, the care suffered and my child passed away. And so essentially it's this, not necessarily directly attributed, but certainly, finding, like you said, precedents, setting precedents law, setting case law for these type of things that allow them to continue that in the future. But saying, listen, I sued the hospital in 2020, the amended lawsuit after the daughter passed away. So, yeah, this is exactly the question for you at Cormars. Now you're actually saying, listen, I could go in for a normal birth of my child could die, and I could have all of those ensuing emotional and challenges in life that exist, right, after that type of event in a family, just because of a ransomware. And I think it's those type of, I hate saying it, but emotions that start driving us changing the hearts and minds. Right.
Right.
You know, I've always joked about this is people need to see people fall off the cliff before they believe they need to make changes to their defensive posture. So,
No,
yeah.
Matt, spot on right there, man. I mean, we were talking about this before the stream. I go into Reddit, MSP a lot, and this is big news in the MSP world, and no one's even talking about it. And it's important to bring this stuff to light because it's like you said, if no one's talking about it, no one knows it exists. They don't know the repercussions, or they're just scared or not, or kind of turning a blind eye. So, yeah, if you guys are on here, not sure what's going on.
Yeah, light it up. I mean, I think, you know, I will wrap it at this. You know, we've kind of beat a dead horse, but, you know, the Justice Department is not only getting teeth, and as they said it, they're sharpening their swords. They're able to reach after these threat actors wherever they may be. They're also looking inwardly, right? And they're also looking at this systemic problem that comes from having no barrier to entry. Right? No barrier to entry to be an MSP, no barrier to entry to do business with vendors, no barrier to entry in a lot of ways to have the knowledge. I mean, look at Cobalt Strike, the #1 attack platform. Guess what it is? It's the #1 defense platform. Right. And so like we have this just giant gap, and I don't want to discredit that. It was Eric that said that, you know, about, you know, vendors having some barriers to entry because of these things. And yeah, I think we need to start defining our industry in a way that's more of a professional service. And, you know, if hairdressers have their own boards of cosmetology in every city, state, and governance around us, why in the hell do I have the ability to destroy an entire company, hundreds and thousands of lives because of my inaction or my ineptitude? And I think that's going to be something that can't stand. As to how we solve that legislatively or regulatorily or governance-wise, I don't know yet. But we're starting to see those movements happen. And I would ask for MSPs to advocate, damn it. Get out there and talk about the things that are good. Talk about the standards that do need to exist. Talk about what good is. Set standards and follow these frameworks, right? And I think if we don't do that, we're going to get regulated out of existence. We're going to have things that are heavy-handed, stupid legislation, right? I mean, if we just look at the way this is going to play out, we really, really need to start driving what's good for our industry. So that's my advocation for the day out of this conversation. just I can't post that one, Shiva. I'm not doing it.
I like
Love
it.
you.
Like
I do like it. I approve it in my heart. I won't read it. But yeah,
he might be in the car, but still coming to ask for jokes.
He's coming out with them two firing, no doubt. He's not wrong. And I think the problem is that if we look at it with grace, they're but for, you know, go I. Right, in the sense that I promise you, we'll have our own security incidences, we'll have our own challenges. Every MSP will, every vendor will, every CSP, everyone will. And I think it's how we handle it with transparency. I think it's how we handle it going forward with trying to be better every day. And it's how we fight those hearts and minds that say, no, I don't want to take away my local admin rights. That's too challenging. We can't support that. Great. I'm just going to abuse you with it. And I think those are the type of things where it's not just about having tools. It's about having, you know, standards. And if anybody else wants to go with any closing thoughts, I'll shut up now. I'm going to bring Tim back as well. He looks a little more stable and situated, done with his jaunt in the yard.
I was going to ask you guys, you know, if you think the barrier to entry to become an MSP is like scarier now, or that wall is higher than it ever was. Is this going to, you know, scare the pants off some people, or are they just going to turn a blind eye and just keep marching the way they've been marching?
It's gonna be like the Spartans walking into the 300 or whatever it was. Like they're just dying left and right. No, I don't think anybody's really made peace with this understanding that we have to rise tides. I really don't. I think people walk into it and start new businesses every day, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with no plan and no process and no ability to move forward, and they're just faking it till they make it. And I get it. I was there. It's not good enough. So yeah, no, I don't think so. Sorry, I said I was going to shut up. But.
And that might be harsh, but you're taking on a responsibility, and it's a huge responsibility. And there's no acknowledgement of that, right? There's no acknowledgement of what you hold in your hands in this line of work. And that's really what needs to change.
Gun range instructor knows what he's handling. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. Spot on.
Brilliant, Dom. All right, Tim, you got to raise above that. That was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think you've heard say it before. Time to get your house in order.
Yeah.
Yep.
Be honest with yourself.
I'm going to name drop here. About 2-3 years ago, Colin Knox used to do an entire talk track about partners having their house in order and I loved it. The guy's fantastic, and you really spoke to this, 2-3 years ago, and it's spot on. Get your house in order, because if your house isn't, your customers sure aren't either. So
Exactly.
I definitely held that, and we'll never forget it, and something to keep in mind.
Is that the Colin Knox?
The Colin Knox,
Mr. Flamingo himself?
Mr. Tony Stark himself.
I know, right?
Awesome.
Totally. All right,
Awesome.
I'm gonna say one more thing, because Shiva just pulled this string on me, and go self-assessments. Go self-attestation. Yeah. I promise, Your Honor, I've never sped. No. Self-attestedly. I've got controls in place. I don't go more than 70 on the interstate. I count the poles with my right eye when I flick by them. Like, I'm good. Self-attested. No problem. Goes 95 on way home. Right? Like,
Right.
we this is about CMMC 2.0, which, Tim probably will get off on a string. We're not going to get going down this road, but I have a call on Wednesday, and I think anybody that wants to join and pop in, I'll extend the same thing there, where we will be talking about CMMC 2.0 and the move to self-attestation that is just devastating to everything I hold dear in my heart. So. Yeah.
Buying my tongue.
Yeah, I see it, buddy. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining Tim and Shiva and Eric and Jessica and everybody in the crowd. It was wonderful today. See you guys.
Thanks, crew. Bye, guys.
Yep. See you.